Well, hello my friends, welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. In this video today is a special video because it goes out to my generation, Gen Z. Now, of course, I know I don't look like I'm in Gen Z, but I most certainly am. I am simply the ripe age of 22 years old. And, being in my generation and being the individual that I am, and having observed cultural trends and political trends for a very long time, well, at least for as long as one who is my age can reasonably be expected to have observed them, I've noticed some troubling patterns. And one of those patterns is my generation's slavish acceptance and embrace of government control. Now, many people say that my generation is descending into socialism. I wish it were that simple. If this was the case, then I think that you could make a very powerful and compelling argument as to why this descent would be short-lived. After all, socialism, communism, all of those broken, dead ideologies only touch at man's passions. They completely neglect and ignore the nature of things. And when one sees the nature of things, they can see the truth. But this is different. My generation is currently descending into a completely different framework, a completely different system, a system of values, both cultural values and political values, than this nation was originally meant to accommodate. As Pew Research said, as a Pew Research survey released not too long ago said, most Gen Zers, according to current data, are seen as more progressive. They are generally more pro-government. This is the case even amongst Gen Zers who are Republicans. The Republican Party not long ago was, and in some cases still proclaims to be, the party of limited government and free markets. And yet more than half, about 52% of Gen Z Republicans say the government must take a more proactive role in society to quote-unquote help people. These are Republicans, but of course generally my generation is in favor of that kind of stuff as well. And what does this translate into? Well, what it translates into is student loan debt forgiveness, which is essentially a violation of a contract and an obligation that one has to fulfill their debts. It translates into that. It translates into welfare. It translates into a sort of social justice programs, which my generation also en masse endorses. And I'm not here to lecture anyone, but I am here to say one thing. Right now, this is a moment, this is as Reagan said in the 60s, a time for choosing. Now, when Reagan made that very impressive and brilliant speech in support of Senator Barry Goldwater's presidential campaign, we were at a turning point in the country where American conservatism was still developing, it was still churning, it was still coming to being, it was coming to age. And the contrast was so clear. Now, ultimately, that time for choosing, unfortunately, we didn't choose correctly. We chose differently. But we are at another pivotal point, perhaps even more pivotal than the time Reagan made that speech in our country. We are at a point in our country where now mobs roam both the halls of academia and the streets, dictating what one can believe and what one can do. We are at a point in our country where the meaning of words and the bedrock of understanding are being assailed by political opportunists more powerfully than it ever has been in the history of our nation. Of course, during World War II, the government basically saturated the cultural landscape with propaganda and lies to bolster morale for the war effort. But now, they don't even need the government to do so because the corporate media has a lot of people under narrative capture and they are directing them towards their desired ends. My friends, we are at a time right now, not just for choosing, but a time of great consequence for the survival of our nation. And my fear is, if my generation does not get its act together and reverse the course we're on right now, we will not have the ability to choose the future direction of our nation. In fact, what our nation is right now will become almost unrecognizable. Inflation, my friends, has absolutely crushed my generation's prospects, in the short term at least, I believe it'll get better in the long term, in the short term of being able to produce long-standing profits, being able to buy a home earlier, being able to start a family earlier, being able to accrue capital earlier. We are the generation that is impacted with some of the highest levels of inflation since the 70s. Your parents' parents, our parents' parents dealt with this level of inflation. We are now dealing with it as well. But not only that, my friends, but you look at the economic uncertainty, the fact that the United States is effectively now in a recession, where your money goes less. It does not go as further as it was, and growth and investment is down. But you also look at the other factors that come together to make this perfect storm. The fact that my generation exist in an age of information saturation, when the information that they receive, that they get, is not meant to be permanent. It's not meant to be absorbed long term. It's meant to be thrown away after 60 seconds. Nicholas Carr, in his brilliant book, The Shallows, described this phenomenon as the digital mind, the mind that is raised to be involved in short-term, sort of terse, 60-second processing of information like sound bites, and not a mind, the literary mind, which actually engages with the material at hand and tries to understand what is being told. No. All a lot of people in my generation understand right now are TikToks. They understand short 60-second clips. They understand the basics. And basic understanding of ideas and principles essentially allows whoever is giving you that understanding of ideas and principles to manipulate your worldview. Because without a significant understanding of a certain position or a certain idea, how can you truly defend yourself against people who would seek to lie and misrepresent certain ideas to you? This is one of the reasons why I believe the role of government in our society, as it is modeled in front of my generation, as a sort of helping hand, as opposed to a necessary but brutal force, evil, might I say, that is meant to keep in check those who would seek to do you and I harm. My friends, we have elections coming up, and this is not even a call for my generation to vote Republican or Democrat or Libertarian. No. This is a call, rather, for us to reevaluate our value systems. Because, my friends, I'll say something that is not very popular. How you vote is not the most important thing in your life. How you vote, how you campaign, that's not the most important thing to this country. What's the most important thing to this country is that you understand its underlying principles. What is the most important thing to this country is that you understand at the bedrock what this nation, what this experiment was erected to do. What is most important is that you understand the universal moral order of natural law that constitutes the very fabric of our nation. But the moment we forget foundational principles is the moment political opportunists and sophists of all varieties have the ability to capture our imaginations. And right now, we see that so many times on full display. As I was saying to someone recently, most Americans don't even understand some of the most significant events that have happened more recently. Whether it be January 6th, most Americans think, or some Americans think, that it was a fascist uprising to overturn the government, whereas others think that it was an Antifa plot, whereas most Americans don't even realize that both of those narratives are entirely oversimplified, and in fact, it was simply a protest on which some people acted crazy, but other people acted in less crazy and less condemnable ways, and yet everyone is being painted with a broad brush, and yet information capture, media capture on both sides of the aisle have convinced us of mistruths. This is not just with January 6th, it's the same with so many other topics. And yet, again, these basic understandings of these topics is the biggest threat to the survival of America. But I believe my generation has the ability to turn this around. Guys, we have the ability. Imagine this, we are in the world where we have more information, more computing power than the folks who landed on the moon had. We are in a world in which visionaries like Thomas Jefferson, we have more capacity than they did. And these are individuals who were writing constitutions and drafting laws at 20 years old. We are in a world of so much potential and possibility. But unfortunately, there are people who understand this, people who know this, and people who want to use this against you. My message to you all is this. You need not pursue an electoral change, but you must pursue a change of value systems. We must begin to value our individual will and effort more than we do a government handout. We must begin to value the natural law more than we do what is socially fashionable. We must begin to value the bare bones rules of reality as opposed to what society says. We must begin to value the laws of certain subject matters like economics, which conform to how things work, not how we wish them to be. We must begin to value once more truth and reject the postmodernist hell and reject the statist hell and reject the tyrannical project that political movements since the beginning of the 20th century and even a little bit before then have tried to sick on this country. We must begin to value the vision of the founding, and we must raise our voices in an affirmation of that eternal vision, and then we must proceed in public life, in our own personal lives, as if we were emissaries of those values. We must begin to value what this nation was built upon before we inevitably lose it forever. I have hope, but hope without works, just like faith, is dead. And my hope is that this will inspire some of you to go ahead, and if your value system is not correct, or if it is lacking, to reform it and to understand just how great this political moment that we inherit is. My friends, thank God, I love you guys so much. If you love me, please be sure to go to my Patreon, patreon.com/officialcwatson, or my Discord, or my PayPal, which is my email, officialcwatson.com. My Discord is in the comment section down below. Please be sure to like this video, to share this video, to subscribe to this channel. My friends, I love you guys so much, and please stay offensive. Bye, guys.